I'm going to try to show you on number 5 is that the rapture is not in Matthew 24 and 25. And that becomes a very big deal because almost everybody that argues for a post-trib, mid-trib type of view, they always say, well, look, the coming of the Lord is here in chapter 24, verses 29 and 30, at the end of the tribulation period. And I'll try to show you that you're fishing there in the wrong pond because Matthew 24 and 25 is not about the church. It's about the nation of Israel. So therefore, you're not going to find rapture truths there. So 7th on my list, and I listed this number 7 intentionally because it deals with typology. And typology can be sort of subjective. And so this probably isn't my top argument, but it's one of the 7. And so it still needs to be mentioned. And it has to do with this. Number 7, symbolic parallels, or what we would call typology, mandate a pre-tribulational rapture. So this is why I had you open up to Luke 17, verses 26 through 30, and this is what our Lord said as he was describing the end. He says, just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. For they were eating and drinking and marrying, they were given in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. It was the same in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planning, they were building. But on the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Let me stop there just for a minute. You'll notice verse 29 says the fire and brimstone did not hit Sodom and Gomorrah until Lot went out from the city. And then we say, well, nice history lesson. How does it apply to the future? Well, verse 30 applies it to the future when Jesus says it will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed. So there are 2 times in history, biblically speaking, where God has poured out his direct wrath on the world. And these are not things related to the discipline of Israel, where she went into the 70-year captivity, etc. God's program for Israel is a different situation entirely. Israel's purpose in God is to be converted in the tribulation period. So a lot of people will use arguments for the 70-year captivity, such as, see, I told you so, ha, 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 God's people are in the tribulation. And they're confusing God's program for the church with God's program for Israel. These examples here have nothing to do with the nation of Israel. In fact, the flood took place before Israel ever existed as a nation. Israel doesn't even come into existence until post-fall, post-flood, post-Tower of Babel, Genesis 12. So these are times when God has done something by way of pouring out wrath. And what Jesus is saying is if you want to understand God's blueprint for the end, you have to look very carefully at these 2 examples. So the 2 examples are the days of Noah, number 1, and the days of Lot, number 2. So he's speaking here of the flood, number 1, and then the fire, that you'll read all about that in Genesis 6 through 9, roughly. And then after that, he's using a second example of the fire and brimstone God poured out on a very wicked city named Sodom and Gomorrah, and you could read about that in Genesis 19. And so what Jesus is saying here is those 2 scenarios have a pattern to them. And that will be the identical pattern of the end of the age. And if you can understand the pattern, it does not subtract from the doctrine of the rapture being before the tribulation period. In fact, it enhances it.